Hi, and welcome to Why Do Countries Exist, an episode on Indian political parties. So today's episode was requested by TreyTL11 on YouTube. If you want me to talk about another country's political parties, please comment down below, send me an email, or put a request in the request form in the description. I currently have requests to do Malaysian parties, Italian parties, the Chinese United Front, Croatian parties, Danish parties, Irish parties, Belgian parties, New Zealand parties, Colombian parties, Brazilian parties, and many more. In most of my political parties episodes, I've talked about Western democracies. Even places like Russia and South Africa have some commonalities between them and Western democracies like Canada or the Netherlands. But India is a very different beast altogether. India is a democracy, but its party politics are shaped by a combination of uniquely Indian values, some Western values that were brought over usually by political elites, and the vast ethnic, linguistic, religious, and social diversity found in the country. All of this means that this will be a very challenging episode to make, and also many of the parties you might expect to find in a multi-party democracy, like a mainline center-right and center-left party, a centrist or middle ground party, and a more principled right/left-wing party are not really present in Indian politics. There may be a rough equivalent, and of course every country has its own unique political parties, but Indian parties should not be looked at through a purely Western-centric left-right lens. Another important thing to note is India is a big country, both physically large and large in terms of population. So your stereotypical Indian, who probably in your mind speaks Hindi and is Hindu, will not be a politically significant force depending on what state or region you are in. What this, along with the internal governance system of India and its electoral system all means, is India has a bunch of small local regionalized parties. These parties usually are found and appeal to voters in only one, maybe 2 or 3 states, and usually only to a certain kind of voter. These parties ideologically tend to have what I'm going to call the Indian regionalist ideology. This, while it will vary from place to place, essentially means it is left-ish on economics, right-ish on social policy, and its main argument for governing is that they usually being a political dynasty or family within the party, are the best at governing than anyone else and will represent you. India is a federation, being made up of 28 states and 8 union territories, with most of these territories having their own local government. Parties' presence in these federal units will be mentioned throughout the episode. India has 2 houses in its parliament. The lower house is the Lok Sabha, or House of People. It has 543 MPs who are elected from 543 electoral districts found throughout India. In these electoral districts, whoever gets the most votes in that district during an election will become that district's MP. Districts are all based on a federal unit's population. So in the most populous federal unit, Uttar Pradesh, there are 80 districts, while the 9 smallest federal units population-wise only have 1 district each. The Lok Sabha is the most important of the 2 legislative houses, with it electing the Prime Minister, the most powerful political figure in the country, and their cabinet, can write the state's budget, and can vote on rules and regulations. The upper house is the Rajya Sabha, or House of Elders. It has 245 MPs who are indirectly elected from a state's/territory's government. Similar to the Lok Sabha, seats are based on a state's population, with Uttar Pradesh sending 31 members, while 9 states send only 1. The Rajya Sabha is the less important legislative body, with it unable to elect the Prime Minister or write the budget, although it does vote on rules and regulations. A couple small things before I start talking about the parties. First off, I will not talk about every party in India. In the Lok Sabha alone, there are 37 different parties, which is too much, quite frankly, for me to talk about, and I'm not sure how interesting some of the smaller parties are. Maybe if there is some interest, I will make a future episode talking about some more, but today I will only talk about the parties that have at least 3 seats in the Lok Sabha. Indian politics is roughly divided between 3 main camps. First, there are those in the National Democratic Alliance, which is the right-wing political camp. And then there is the United Progressive Alliance, which is the left-wing political camp. Again, I want to emphasize that Indian politics don't fit neatly into the left-right political spectrum. The alliances are based less around ideology and more around state-level politicians deciding to work with one of the two main national-based parties in India for, depending on your view, selfish personal gain, or because they believe one of the two main parties is more effective at governance. The final camp is just everyone not a part of these two camps. Finally, a fun thing about Indian politics is the use of election symbols for each party. When voting for each party, you'll find a small drawing next to them, with this being used to help easily identify the parties on a ballot. Throughout the episode, I'll mention each party's symbol. We'll first start looking at parties in the National Democratic Alliance, the current ruling coalition. This alliance is largely based around the Bharatiya Janata Party, or the Indian People's Party, or BJP. The BJP is actually, as a fun fact, the largest political party on Earth, with 210 million people being members of the party. For some comparison, Nigeria, the 7th most populous country in the world, has 211 million people. The BJP represents Hindu nationalists and subscribe to the belief in Hindutva. This essentially is a belief that India should not be a secular state, but that India should instead be a Hindu state made by and for Hindus. The BJP also embraces a philosophy known as integral humanism, which believes that integration into wider society and spiritualism are needed in order for an individual to succeed. The party overall gets most support among Hindus, especially in what is known as the Hindu Belt in the north, where most people speak Hindi. Its supporters often are paradoxically either urban members of the upper castes or poor Hindus from rural areas. It currently has 301 seats in the Lok Sabha, 97 seats in the Rajya Sabha, and is a part of the ruling coalition in 15 states and the territory of Puducherry, and is present in every state/territorial legislature except Andhra Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, and Kerala. It is currently headed by Jagat Prakash Nadda, a Rajya Sabha MP from Himachal Pradesh. The current President and Prime Minister of India, Ram Nath Kovind, and Narendra Modi are both members of the party. The current election symbol for the party is a lotus. I guess you could say you have to notice how good they are in government. Notice, lotus, never mind. The BJP's closest comparison to Western politics would probably be some sort of conservative party. The BJP opposes the current secular Indian state, believing that it benefits minorities like Muslims while hurting the majority Hindu population. It opposes greater autonomy for Muslim-majority Kashmir, wants a uniform civil code, wants to make it easier for non-Muslims to enter the country, and favors a strong army and police force to counter both Pakistan and China, along with paramilitaries inside India. Economically, it historically was fairly protectionist and economically nationalist. But since the 1990s, it has moved towards a more free market course, favoring deregulation and privatization. It also is pro-USA and pro-Israeli, generally is opposed to LGBTQ rights, wants more money to go towards developing rural India, and wants India to be carbon neutral by 2070. BJP is one of those parties that you either hate or you love, with very little in between. Critics accuse the party of holding anti-Muslim values and being almost fascist-like. It has strong connections to a Hindu quasi-paramilitary group known as the RSS, that infamously has been involved in sectarian violence against Muslims and Christians. India under Modi's government has also been accused of democratic backsliding, with the party and its activists accused of relentlessly going after any institution or organization that opposes them. The recent success of the BJP in the last two elections has partially been attributed to Modi's likability, with many people voting for the BJP solely because they thought Modi would be a good prime minister. This, while it benefits the BJP in the short run, does mean that eventually, when Modi is no longer the leader of the BJP, it might be very difficult to convince people to vote for the party. Finally, the party's original upper-class support base and free market economics have led some to call it an elitist party, although the party has been gaining more support from normal Indians. The next party is Janata Dal United, or People's Party United, or JDU. JDU is mainly active in the state of Bihar, but also operates in a couple other states, usually in the northeast. It describes itself as socialist and secular, but also adhering to integral humanism like the BJP. Its support base is often among lower caste people, particularly in the northeast corner of Bihar. It has 16 seats in the Lok Sabha, 5 seats in the Rajya Sabha, and is a part of the ruling coalition in Bihar and Arunachal Pradesh. It is currently headed by Lanlan Singh, a Lok Sabha MP from Bihar, and former member of the state's legislative council. The party's election symbol is an arrow, so you could say they're as straight as an arrow. JDU fits the mold of the Indian Regionalist Party, It favors giving Bihar a special status in India, favors center-left-ish policies to ensure equal opportunities for all people, wants more access to cheap healthcare and education for the poor, supports a secular state, and wants to move towards a casteless society. The last National Democratic Alliance party we will talk about is the Rashtriya Lok Janshakti Party, or the National People's Manpower Party, or RLJP. RLJP is another party based in Bihar, and was formed recently in 2021. RLJP originally came from a faction of the Lok Janshakti Party that split due to a leadership dispute, with the RLJP emerging as a faction with a majority of parliamentarians that still support the BJP government. Its theoretic support base comes from poor Dalits in the middle of Bihar, but it has never actually contested an election, so it's unclear if the party will remain relevant. The party currently has 5 members of the Lok Sabha. It is currently headed by Pashupati Kumar Paras, a member of the Lok Sabha and Minister of Food Processing Industries. The party's election symbol is a sewing machine, so I guess they're gonna sew the society back together. I'm sorry, the bad jokes are only going to get worse. RLJP mainly appeals to stuff that Dalits are interested in, such as ensuring increased access to healthcare and education, along with fighting for greater respect in wider Indian society. The Lok Janshakti Party apparently also fought for increased rights of Muslims in Bihar, and just generally centre-leftish policies. So we will now start talking about the parties of the United Progressive Alliance, and we'll start off with its leading party, the Indian National Congress, or INC. Congress has been the on and off again dominant party in India since independence, greatly shaping the nation. It, unlike the BJP, is strongly in favor of a secular state. I've seen Congress described several different ways, with it being labeled as a civic nationalist party, a social democratic party, a social liberal party, a Gandhian socialist party, or a Big Tent party. It seems the common thinking nowadays is that the party can largely just be summed up as supporting the Nehru-Gandhian political dynasty, an influential political dynasty that has dominated Congress in India since the 50s, and funnily enough, has no relation to the famous Mahatma Gandhi, who was also associated with Congress. Its support base seems to be fairly diverse, but generally gets more support among the middle class, middle-aged voters, tends to be rural, and found in the south and to a certain extent in Punjab and in the northeast, and Muslims in the country. It currently has 52 seats in the Lok Sabha, 34 seats in the Rajya Sabha, is a part of the ruling coalition in 6 states, and is present in every state/territorial legislature except 7 of them. It is currently headed by Rahul Gandhi, a Lok Sabha MP from Kerala. The election symbol of the party is a hand, so you really gotta hand it to them. They know how to run a country. Congress opposes deregulation in the agricultural sector. It favors a simple 18% goods and service tax, wants to do more to prevent unemployment from increasing, supports universal basic income, and ultimately backs a mixed or free market economy, with a strong private sector. It supports secularism and opposes Hindutva, but also has supported making Hindi the lingua franca of India, and since 2014, has slowly come to make slight appeals to it. It wants India to have friendly relations with the countries around it, and favors the non-aligned movement. It also favors a crackdown on paramilitary groups in the country, and opposes vigilante groups, wants to invest more in public healthcare, and opposes corruption. Ironically, though, the Congress is often considered one of, if not the most corrupt party in India. The Congress is seen as representing less of a clear ideology, and more of just saying whatever it takes to get them into power, so the party's elites can get rich off of bribes. They are seen as just acting as a mirror towards the BJP, doing and backing the opposite of whatever the BJP wants. This makes them seem less as a party with its own goals, philosophy, and ambition, as more as just a desperate party begging for votes. Since Congress has ruled India for most of independence, this means that both everything good they did they can fall back on for support, but also everything bad they did can be used against them. Next is the Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam, or the Dravidian Progressive Federation, or DMK. DMK is a party based in the state of Tamil Nadu and Puducherry, with it and a rival party, the AIADMK, which is allied with the BJP, being the 2 dominant parties in Tamil Nadu, which is home to the Tamil people, who speak a language that is very different from the Indo-Aryan languages in the north. The DMK promotes a Tamil and Southern Indian identity, and seems to be fairly social democratic. Its supporters are Tamil speakers, and seem to be found in the citadel of Chennai, and in the rural interior of the state. It currently has 24 seats in the Lok Sabha, 10 seats in the Rajya Sabha, and is the ruling party in Tamil Nadu, and is the main opposition in Puducherry. It is currently headed by M.K. Stalin, who was actually named by his father after the Soviet dictator, and is currently in the Tamil Nadu Legislative Assembly, and is the chief minister of the state. The party's election symbol is a rising sun. So I guess they're gonna rise to the top in Tamil Nadu. DMK is very supportive of promoting a Dravidian identity. It opposes attempts to make Hindi the main language of India, wants Tamil to be a compulsory language taught in Tamil Nadu, wants to make it easier for Tamils from Sri Lanka to immigrate over, supports promoting Tamil history, and wants Tamil to become a co-official language of India. It also favors strong government involvement in the economy, wanting to provide more relief to farmers, fishermen, and handloom weavers, and wants to do more to ensure young people have jobs. It also wants to make Tamil Nadu 100% literate in the next couple years, wants to increase maternity leave for women, and wants to do more to protect the rivers and lakes in the state. The DMK and other regionalist-based parties that exist outside of the Hindi belt are usually accused of trying to undermine India and promoting division in the country. The DMK itself historically did argue for a separate country in southern India to free it from perceived northern Indian rule and of being sympathetic to Tamil separatists in Sri Lanka. This has made some, especially Hindi speakers, feel as though parties like the DMK are not patriotic enough and are attempting to discriminate against them. The DMK has also been accused of corruption and nepotism. Next we go to the Nationalist Congress Party, or NCP. The NCP is a breakoff of the INC, although for most of its history it seemed to be an ally of the INC, and generally promotes progressive and liberal values. While the party is classified as a national party and is active across many parts of India, it is mostly based in the state of Maharashtra, with its support base seemingly being based in rural areas outside of Mumbai. It currently has 5 seats in the Lok Sabha, 4 seats in the Rajya Sabha, is a part of the ruling coalition in Maharashtra, Kerala, and Jharkhand, and is present in the Gujarat and Meghalaya Legislative Assembly. It is currently headed by Sharad Pawar, a member of the Rajya Sabha from Maharashtra, and is the former chief minister of the state. The party's election symbol is a clock, so I guess you could say its policies are always right on time. Don't ask me what that means. The NCP is based around a lot of the same kind of values Congress is based off of. It wants a secular society and favors a civic nationalist identity. It has recently called for India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh to be merged together into a single South Asian country. It also backs greater power to states and local villages, wants to do more to prevent discrimination of the lower castes, opposes corruption, and supports the improving of air infrastructure in India. We move on to the Indian Union Muslim League, or IUML. The IUML is unsurprisingly a party based around representing the interests of Muslims in India, specifically in the South. It was formed after Indian independence to represent a continuation of the All-Indian Muslim League that would go on to rule Pakistan. It does not advocate for an Islamist ideology, nor to turn India Muslim, but it does believe that Muslims in India should be protected. It is largely supported by poor castes of Muslims in central Kerala. It has 3 seats in the Lok Sabha, 1 seat in the Rajya Sabha, and is a part of the opposition in Kerala. It is currently headed by K.M. Kader Mohadeen, a former member of the Lok Sabha. The party's election symbol is a ladder, so they're gonna climb the ladder to the top of Indian politics. These puns just keep getting better and better, don't they? While the League represents Muslim interest, it tends to avoid appealing to communal interest. It seeks to keep a kind of status quo in Kerala, wanting to protect the benefits and protections Kerala's Muslims currently have. It tends to be conservative in social matters as well, opposing gay marriage. The last party of the United Progressive Alliance we will talk about is the Jammu and Kashmir National Conference, or JKNC. JKNC is a Jammu and Kashmir-based party, with it arguing for greater self-autonomy for Kashmir, hoping that one day both India and Pakistani Kashmir can be united into a single state. It seems that the current party line is that Kashmir should be united under the Indian state, but I've also heard the party described as moderate separatist, so it's possible that elements within the party argue for separatism. The party support base is largely made up of Kashmiri Muslims, based around the Kashmiri Valley in the northwest corner of the state. It currently has 3 seats in the Lok Sabha. It is headed by Farooq Abdullah, a Lok Sabha MP and former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. The party's election symbol is a plow, so they're gonna plant the seeds of great things to come for Kashmir. The party favors autonomy for the Kashmiris, and strongly opposes the Indian government's decision to revoke the autonomous status of Kashmir and dissolve the state government. It wants Kashmiri values, language, and autonomy to be respected. It wants to make it easier for people to move and trade between Indian and Pakistani Kashmir, favors non-violent dissent against the Indian government's dominance in Kashmir, opposes the large military presence in Kashmir, and supports a secular state. So we are done with the parties associated with the two main political coalitions in the country. We move on to the All-Indian Trinamool Congress, or All-Indian Grassroots Congress, or AITC. AITC was formed as a breakoff of the INC by current party leader Mamata Banerjee. It rose to prominence in West Bengal, promoting a more populist version of the INC's center-left program. It will largely based in Bengal, and mainly gets support among Bengali speakers, particularly in southern Bengal, has also made plans to try and expand out across India, with it hoping to become the main anti-BJP force by 2024. It currently has 22 seats in the Lok Sabha, 12 seats in the Rajya Sabha, is a current ruling party of West Bengal, and is present in the Arunachal Pradesh, Goa, Manipur, Meghalaya, and Tripura legislatures. Banerjee, besides being the AITC's leader, is a member of the West Bengal legislature, and is the chief minister of the state. The party's election symbol is a flower, so their policies are gonna flower? Like, grow, or something. AITC, like other regionalist parties, seeks to promote developmentalist politics, while also helping the poor in Indian society. It wants greater self-autonomy on the local level, seeks to promote Bengali pride, and wants to do more to keep petrol prices down. The party has also fought for an expanded police force in West Bengal, supports a secular state, and wants to make it easier for people from poor areas to get government jobs. AITC, like other regionalist leaders, is criticized for being perceived as disrupting Indian unity. Banerjee has been accused of bending over backwards to appease Muslim Bengalis, letting illegal immigrants from Bangladesh into the country, and allowing violence against Hindus to occur in order to achieve electoral gains. While Banerjee has made a name for himself as a politician who embraced a populist attitude and strongly opposed any and all corruption, while in power, her government has been accused of corruption itself and of using the police to silence her opponents. Banerjee also apparently said sexual assault is occurring more in India because parents aren't stopping their kids from holding hands in public, which is quite a position to have. We go to another INC breakoff, with the Yuvana Shama Makaraithu Congress Party, or Youth Labour and Farmers Congress Party, or YSRCP. The YSR Congress is based in the state of Andhra Pradesh, and was formed by current party leader Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy, after his father, a popular political figure in the state, passed away. The party is largely based around promoting Y.S. Reddy, along with his political allies, who include his mother, and several other politicians, who for the most part seem to be associated with his father. It gets most of its support in southern Andhra Pradesh, and in the interior. It currently has 22 seats in the Lok Sabha, 6 seats in the Rajya Sabha, and is the current ruling party in Andhra Pradesh. Y.S. Reddy is the current chief minister of the state, and is a member of the Legislative Assembly. The party's election symbol is a ceiling fan. I guess they, as a party, have fans? YSR Congress is an Indian regionalist party, and I'm not really sure what else to say. It favors increased welfare to disadvantaged groups in society, favors greater autonomy, and has been accused of corruption and assaulting the opposition. For a party with a bit more to talk about, we go to Shiv Sena, or Army of Shivji, a reference to a 17th century Indian ruler. Shiv Sena is a nationalist party, promoting both Hindutva, along with specifically appealing to Marathi nationalists, with a party based largely in the state of Maharashtra. Much of its support comes from this state, and in the city of Bombay, along the coast, and in some parts of the interior. It also generally gets support from upper caste voters in the state. It currently has 18 seats in the Lok Sabha, 3 seats in the Rajya Sabha, and is a part of the ruling coalition in Maharashtra. It is currently headed by Uddhav Thackeray, a member of the Legislative Assembly and Chief Minister from Maharashtra. The party's election symbol is a bow and arrow, so they're gonna defend their constituents. Shiv Sena was formed on fairly xenophobic grounds, wanting to remove non-Marathis and form a pure Marathi state. While it seems they have moderated, they do still advocate for a Hindu state, opposing secularism, oppose immigration into the state from either Indians from other parts of the country or Muslims, and support India taking a more hostile stance towards Pakistan. The party also has been hostile towards trade unions, while being friendly towards businesses, opposes domestic abuse, wants to improve infrastructure in the state, and has built thousands of homes for slum dwellers. Shiv Sena is often categorized as fascist, chauvinistic, and extremist. The party has also been engaged in violence at several points throughout its history, with its party members partaking in violence at several points, along with making threats against their opponents and Muslims. The party, like pretty much all parties in India, has been accused of corruption and nepotism. Its support base of upper caste groups has also led to accusations of elitism. Finally, the fact that it is currently in the government in Maharashtra, with the secular and moderate INC, NCP, and its allies, could lead to more radical members of the party to feel disillusioned with the party, and ultimately lead to breakoffs of it. Next, there is the Biju Janata Dal, or Biju People's Party, or BJD. The BJD is based in the state of Odisha, and is again an Indian regionalist party with a center-leftist ideology. It is similar to the YSRCP in the fact that it was formed from a son of a dead former chief minister of the state. It was formed in 1997 by Naveen Patnaik, and has ruled the state since 2000. Patnaik, it seems, has made a very big deal about fighting corruption, living moderately, and holding, quote, pro-poor policy positions. It seems to get a lot of support along the coast and in the east. It currently has 12 seats in the Lok Sabha, 9 seats in the Rajya Sabha, and is the ruling party in Odisha. Patnaik is a member of the Legislative Assembly and is the chief minister of the state. The party's election symbol is a conch shell. These are found by the ocean, so you could say the party is going to see the future of the state and do good things, or something. Next we go to the Bahujan Samaj Party, or Majority Society Party, or BSP. BSP is another party advocating for the poor in India. It is largely based in Uttar Pradesh, but also has at times made inroads in several other states across the Hindu belt. It is mainly supported by Bahujans, or lower-class Dalits, and generally appeals to other disadvantaged groups and religious minorities, by promoting left-ish policies, promising more social welfare, secularism, and improved infrastructure. Its supporters seem to be concentrated at the west and eastern ends of Uttar Pradesh, with less support in the middle of the state. It currently has 10 seats in the Lok Sabha, 3 seats in the Rajya Sabha, is present in the Uttar Pradesh and Chhattisgarh legislatures. It is currently headed by Mayawati, a former member of the Rajya Sabha and former chief minister of Uttar Pradesh. The party's election symbol is an elephant. So, like an elephant, you shouldn't forget all the good they have done. We go to the Telangana Rashtra Samithi, or Telangana State Council, or TRS. TRS is based in the state of Telangana, and was formed in 2001 to divide Telangana from the state of Andhra Pradesh, which they achieved in 2014. It argued the Telangana region needed to become a state in order for greater self-autonomy and to protect minorities and poorer castes in the state. It seems to hold much of the same Indian regionalist ideology as other parties previously mentioned, although I've also heard it described as center-right, neoliberal, and conservative. It gets most of its support in southern and western Telangana. It currently has 9 seats in the Lok Sabha, 7 seats in the Rajya Sabha, and is the ruling party in Telangana. It is currently headed by Kalandvaktra Chandrasekhar Rao, a member of the Legislative Assembly and Chief Minister of Telangana. The party's election symbol is a car, so they're going to drive you to a better Telangana. The next party is very similar to the BSP. The Samajwadi Party, or Socialist Party, or SP, is largely based in Uttar Pradesh, gets support among the poor in the state, and its support base tends to be concentrated at the western ends of Uttar Pradesh and the south. However, unlike the BSP, SP seems to have a more defined ideology, describing itself as socialist, although there seem to be some differences between this party and socialists in other countries. It currently has 5 seats in the Lok Sabha, 5 seats in the Rajya Sabha, is a part of the government in Maharashtra, and is the main opposition in Uttar Pradesh. It is currently headed by Akhilesh Yadav, a member of the Lok Sabha, and former Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh. The party's election symbol is a bike, so they're going to drive you to a better Uttar Pradesh, but they'll drive in the middle of the road so it's inconvenient for everyone behind them. SP backs a lot of the same stuff other parties we have talked about back. Wanting more welfare for the poor, greater opportunities to the disadvantaged, and a secular state. However, it also is on paper, at the very least, hostile towards capitalism and wants to abolish, quote, feudalistic tendencies. That being said, it also talks on its website of working with entrepreneurs to make it easier to open a business. It also backs investing more in farmers and making sure farming is being done more sustainably, wants to improve the infrastructure of the state, wants to make it easier for women to enter the workforce, and has stated that they want to do more to stop false claims of domestic abuse. We finally go to a party with a stronghold in more than one state, with the Communist Party of India Marxist, or CPIM. CPIM is a communist party, and is one of the many different communist parties in the country that either participate in elections, protest, or insurgency. CPIM was formed as a breakoff of the original Communist Party of India in the 60s, with the CPIM opposing collaboration with the national bourgeoisie and taking a pro-China, anti-Soviet approach. It was originally a very radical party, with party members regularly involved in street clashes with the government, but starting in the late 60s, it began to engage in more parliamentarian work, and have moderated quite a bit. It gets most of its support in southern non-Hindi states, especially Kerala, the very diverse and rural northeast, and West Bengal. Although, in recent years, this support base has been eroding. It currently has 3 seats in the Lok Sabha, 6 seats in the Rajya Sabha, is a part of the government in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, and is present in another 7 state legislatures. It is currently headed by Sitaram Yechuri, a former member of the Rajya Sabha from West Bengal. The party's election symbol is a hammer and sickle with a star. So they're gonna make India a star when they're in power. CPIM is in favor of reorganizing the Indian state. It wants to grant greater power to state and tribal governments, wants to fight against corruption, wants to abolish caste, and opposes any form of discrimination, whether it was based on religion, sex, disability, or nationality. It also favors radical land reform and the cancellation of farmer debts, favors an eventual nationalization of all monopolies in the country, favors greater worker rights, and backs a non-interventionist foreign policy. CPIM suffers from the same thing most communist parties suffer with, being accused of upholding and defending the crimes communist states have done. This makes it so the party is naturally disliked by Indians more well-off. More religious voters will dislike the party for its very principled secularist stance. CPIM also is criticized for how it ran West Bengal for several years, actively working with the Indian state to violently crush dissident movements that ranged from other communist groups to people protesting a chemical plant that was being built by a foreign conglomerate on their farmland. Finally, the last party we will talk about is the Telugu Desam Party, or Telugu Country Party, or TDP. TDP is based in Andhra Pradesh, representing the main rival to the YSRCP. It's ideologically similar to the YSRCP, except it seems to be considered slightly more liberal and pro-business. It gets most support in the coastal regions in the north of the state. It currently has 3 seats in the Lok Sabha, 1 seat in the Rajya Sabha, and is the main opposition in Andhra Pradesh. It is currently headed by Nara Chandabairu Nandeyu, a member of the Legislative Assembly and former Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh. The party's election symbol is a bike, literally the same bike SP has. Have you no shame, TDP? So those are all of the Indian political parties I will talk about today. There are really only 2 that could reasonably hope to control the country at the national level, the BJP and INC, but there are many political parties that can influence regional politics, and can play a vital role in making or breaking a coalition. Also, the website election.in was a very useful source for this episode. It seems it hasn't been updated in a couple years, but it still provides relatively accurate information. But up next, we'll go to Malaysia and talk about political parties there, and then we'll talk about the history of Brunei, which is also in Southeast Asia, and then we'll talk about Italian political parties. So yeah, thank you, thanks for listening, thanks for watching. If you want to email me, you can email me at whydocountries@gmail.com. for your thoughts, comments, suggestions, or hate mail. Take care. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.